Welcome back to the show. The month of October is Bullying Awareness Month, a time for us to shine a spotlight on the fact that something said could impact the rest of someone's life, even if for you, it was just another day.
We're sitting down with Chad Allee to discuss not only what red flags to look out for when it comes to others' bullying behavior, but also how we can better ourselves as well. Chad, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me. October is Bullying Awareness Month, and these conversations are so important because bullying requires shame, stigma, and secrecy. And so by having these conversations, we're able to shine a light on shame, stigma, and secrecy and help allow people to come forward.
It's so important to understand that this is not unfortunately something rare. It's something that affects every single one of us or someone we love.
Right. And so when we look at what bullying is unwarranted acts of aggression that are repeated from an imbalance of power. And so when we think about like how bullying affects people, we know that 25% of kids, so 1 in 4 kids, report that they have been bullied. But 80% of kids report that they are aware of bullying, and so they're witnesses to what's happening. We also know that bullying starts in elementary school, it peaks in middle school, and then in high school it reduces, but the acts of bullying in high school are way more intense than they are otherwise.
Oh, I bet.
It's also interesting because 1 in 3 adults report that they either were bullied or are currently being bullied. So it's not just a kid's issue.
No, not at all.
It's also important that we focus on a couple groups. We know that 40% of kids that identify as members of the LGBT community or are questioning their identity report that they've been bullied. But also kids that are differently abled or unique in some way, that maybe have a mental or physical or emotional disability, report that they are bullied 50%.
Can you give us some sense of the range of situations that we're talking about? I mean, you were kind of, as you were going through elementary and middle and high school, I was getting some flashbacks because I was bullied a little bit.
Same.
But I can also remember some kids got it way worse than I did. So, what kinds of situations are we talking about? Where does, a teasing gesture on the playground turn into bullying or something worse?
Right. So it's important to note that bullying is never deserved. No one deserves to be bullied. Also, bullying follows all demographics. It doesn't matter if you're an athlete, if you're a band kid, if you're in honor society, all kids report that bullying happens at an equal rate. Bullying can be physical, it can be emotional, it can be verbal, and it can be cyber bullying.
That was my next question was, have we seen a huge influx in reports of bullying since the internet really has become synonymous with life? It seems like it gives particularly adults, it almost gives them a pass to engage with that bullying side of themselves.
Right. So there has not been a report of an increase in bullying, but we know that there has been an increase in bullying.
Absolutely.
So people are not coming forward because the shame, the stigma, and the secrecy that is required, people are experiencing more bullying, but they're not talking about it.
Gotcha.
So with the advent of more cyber bullying, it does spread the demographics even into the adult, like as you mentioned. Because if you think about all of the comments that happen online really are bullying.
Yeah.
There's somebody that you're commenting to. And it happens, like we hear about celebrities that are like, I just can't take social media anymore, so they turn it off. That's a form of bullying.
Yeah.
And with kids, it takes away the personalization. And so we move away from, it's really hard to say something to you in person.
Exactly.
But if I'm at home and I'm texting
Behind
you
a
something,
computer.
or I'm texting somebody else about you, it does make it easier. And those things hurt just as much and can do just as much damage.
There's so many things running through my head about this, but one of the things that occurs to me is that being behind the screen, I mean, you mentioned there aren't an increase in reports necessarily, but it's almost like we've just become so accustomed to it that
Yeah.
We don't even
just become part of life.
Like, I'm not going to report this as bullying because it's just
you just delete the comment and
every
move on.
hour of every day.
Yep.
And also the anonymity. I mean, I know a lot of people, you know, let's use Facebook for
Perfect
example.
Perfect.
Your names are attached to your comments, but a lot of people
create
have
fake
names,
profiles.
fake accounts. Yeah. And that's the difference with the younger kids or Snapchat, for example. It's personally directed, like you know who it is and where it's coming from. All those things kind of taken into account.
Right, and so there's a couple things is that we have to remember that most victims of bullying never come forward because of the secrecy that is required and the shame and stigma they have about coming forward. And we also need to look at, like, what are some of those warning signs that maybe we could watch for, because sometimes kids are, you know, especially with online things, they're being bullied, but they don't even know until somebody comes to them and shares pages and pages and pages of things that have been said about them. So it's not just little things that build up over time. It's let's just dump all of this on you. And so the emotions go from, okay, I can handle a little teasing, I can handle a little bit of this, to, no, it's a dump truck of stuff that I just got right before I walk into math class.
That doesn't sound healthy either.
Right.
No, and that, I think part of this issue was the whole mentality of, well, you got to have thick skin. And it's like, there's definitely a line. Now, in our last minute or so together today, Chad, what can we do to combat this? What can we do to help? Because it seems like, particularly online, if you respond to someone who's bullying just with a, hey, not cool, can you stop bullying me, or just no comment, it opens up the floodgates for even more negative interaction.
So there's a couple things that we want to look at. One is, if a kid does come forward, we never want to say to ignore it. We never want to tell them to get over it, and we never want to tell them to fight back. What we want to do is create that environment where they can share with us without the shame and stigma. One of the things I recommend to my clients is we want to write things down, because there's power in paper. So if you're being bullied and you can say, I got on the bus and Eric ripped my sweatshirt and teased me when I was on the bus on Thursday. Also on Wednesday, these things happened and he stole my lunch money. On Tuesday, nothing happened because Eric wasn't on the bus that day. On Monday, if we have power in paper, it helps bring legitimacy, because it is the shame and stigma, and because so many adults are part of the secret keeping, and we think we just need to toughen up when that's not really the way to go.
Exactly.
Interesting. Resources for folks, where do you start? Is it school counselor maybe for the kids, but you said adults are fallen victim too.
So what we want to do is increase the protective factors. And so kids doing peer groups for anti-bullying is one of the most important things that we can do, because that really does have an impact on schools and communities. We want to make sure that we are being open and available to people so that we can check in on them and get past that depersonalization piece. So check in on people and see how that's going. If we get into a serious situation, we of course want to call 988, which is the mental health hotline, and they'll give you resources that way. People can go to therapy, but really any trusted adult should be able to help a kid share their story, write it down, and then work on getting help.
Well, Chad, thank you so much.
Thanks, Eric.
It's just a very important topic to cover. And we'll make sure all the links you need to connect with Chad and his team over at Michigan Therapy and Counseling, with offices here in Cadillac as well as Marquette. All the links are going to be available on 9and10news.com after the show today.